Hey everybody, it's Alex from Forever Classic Games, and this episode is really cool because we have Gamester81, John Lester, with us, and he's been around the retro game community for quite some time. And we talk about one of his new game releases in partnership with his company CollectorVision, so you can check out Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan on Switch or Steam, and eventually their plan is to bring that title to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. But there's a whole lot of games, whole lot of retro homebrew that you can find on their website, so do check out CollectorVision.com. And I do hope that everybody enjoys this episode. We've got a lot of really cool things for Forever Classic for January. A lot of it's going to be recorded in January, so I'm not sure how much you guys are going to get to listen to this month, but we have that. We have 3 or 4 major interviews, guest appearances, whatever you want to call them, and those will be really cool across the gaming spectrum. So we've got some like retro-inspired stuff, some new stuff. I'm really excited about it. Other than that, we do have a special announcement to make soon that I am just psyched for, and that'll hopefully help us push Forever Classic upwards and outwards. So if you haven't already, do check out foreverclassicgames.com, collectorvision.com, and please, if you did enjoy this episode, share it with a friend. And without further ado, here is our conversation with John Lester, also known as Gamester81. Welcome to the Forever Classic Podcast, the show that seeks enlightenment through films, games, and other geek culture. I'm Alex McCumbers, and today is one for the history books, my friends. We've got one of the longer-running retro creators on YouTube with us. We have Gamester81, John Lester.
Alex, what's up, man? How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Dude, it is going. It has been pretty interesting because I kind of went through a nostalgia trip watching your old videos, and I realized that I was watching them in, like, middle school, maybe early high school, and for context, I'm, like, 28, so I've been watching your stuff for the past, like, 10 years or more.
Well, that makes me feel old. Thank you. No, it's great. No,
it does me, too.
That's awesome. I appreciate the long time support.
Yeah, it's been really cool because, like, a lot of things, I came into the retro gaming space not really realizing the scope that it went to. Like, I was always a Nintendo kid. I started on the NES, so anything prior to that I'm kind of shaky on. But, like, all the different cool hardware and stuff you've covered over the years, and just generally putting out content has been super educational for me, personally.
Oh, that's great. That's why I do it. Thank you.
So I guess we'll start there. Tell me your history. Why'd you get into retro gaming and making those videos?
Yeah, so started my YouTube channel, I think, back in 2008, like 2009, so it's been a while. So I got my camera when I got married back in 2009 and had all these hardware, these consoles, and wanted to find more information about these systems, kind of more unique, like the Bandai Apple Pippin and an N64 disk drive. And there really wasn't information on those consoles at the time, really much online, no videos about it. We started watching AVGN, you know, a video game nerd, loved his show, and started, now that I had a camera as a wedding gift my parents gave me, I'm like, I might as well just do some videos and talk about the hardware and do my own research and talk about it. That's kind of how I got started.
A lot of people that I've talked to over the years have cited AVGN as like their first spark of inspiration.
For sure. Yeah.
He's
same case
one of the best.
He is great.
He's still putting out good videos too. Like, they kind of have that cheesy flair they've always had, but I still really enjoy them.
Right. Absolutely.
So what is like one of your favorite things that you've learned through YouTube as far as like maybe some research or some life lesson or something?
You know, I've met some incredible people. I've made some really good friends in the community. I never thought when I started doing this that I would get my foot in the door to making my own games, which is cool, and making my own gaming event. I mean, it's all opened huge doors for me. So met some really cool friends. I mean, it's a really tight community. You know, we're all here just for the fun of games, and it's cool to talk to people all over the world that have the same interests as I do.
It is a small world because I've gone to a lot of different shows and met a lot of people in the retro space, especially ones that are like connected to Metal Jesus. Just about everybody in his circle I've met at least once, and that's cool. And a lot of them have actually actually like been in the same book that I was in, because I contributed rather to the SNES Omnibus books, volumes 1 and 2 by Barrett Weiss. And so that was really cool. Are you in that?
I am in that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's neat. I've been thinking about packing them around and get them signed, but the last time I had a heavy book in my backpack, I wanted to hurt myself.
They are heavy. Yeah, and there's 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, really well done.
I like them. I think they're really cool. And so in the first volume, my favorite thing that I did was that essay at the back that talks about emulation and how we should stop demonizing it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if it weren't for emulation, we wouldn't have the minis.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think I would be into the things I'm into because I learned so much about the libraries.
Yeah, that's true.
So what do you think about emulation then? Is it something that like you enjoy playing around with? I mean, it seems like you're pretty positive on it.
Yeah, I'm positive on it. I come at a unique perspective because I come from it from both ways, right? So as a game developer myself, we've had our games pirated. And that can be extremely frustrating, right? So you put all this time and money into it, and then these games get pirated, and it's all for naught in so many cases. So I certainly see it from that perspective. But I feel like for games that have been out for a while, 10 plus years, that aren't really selling, they're not on the market anymore, it gives people an opportunity to play games that A, they wouldn't be able to afford, and maybe B, maybe games have been translated they wouldn't be able to play normally. So people have done some really cool fan translations. So I am positive on it. I think emulation has some of my videos. I've talked about the N2, which is a new kind of mini board that's kind of like a Raspberry Pi, but on steroids.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm positive on it overall. I wish people would be more, when it comes to modern games, particularly, I wish people were more sensitive to that. And look, if you want to download a game, that's great. And if you enjoy it, go buy it and support it. That's my point.
That's always been my thing. Like, especially in the indie space, right? If we have a game that we really like, I really try to harp on the idea of like, no, share that with people, make a video about it, like do an article on it. That way people at least know it's out there. And you never know, one person could read it and share it to, 1 billion followers or something, and there you go.
Yeah, for sure. No, but, I think any more people can play my game and advertise it, that's great. But if you're just going to, and it might take two in some ways, the people who do pirate the game are probably people who aren't going to buy the game in the first place. So there's that too, right? But it does get frustrating. I can certainly see both sides of the coin.
Now, how'd you actually get into game design? Because I see that CollectorVision itself has like this really extensive history.
Yeah, so the company itself was founded in 2008. How I got started was back in 2013. I wanted to come up with, long story short, I was doing a series of videos called Retro with Joe, who was a neighbor of mine at the time. And he has a video game store online that he has an enormous collection of games, right? I mean, it's like Indiana Jones. You go into his house, he has crates and crates of games. I mean, it's unbelievable. One series of games that we did, was talk about homebrew games. And at the end of that video, he's like, John, we should do like your own game. And he's like, if you were to do a system, what would you do? And I kind of started thinking about it. I'm like, NES is an awesome system, but there's a lot of homebrew games for it, right? So kind of thinking of like some old school consoles. And one of my first consoles I ever grew up, again, I'm dating myself because I'm an old guy, is a ColecoVision, right? It came out in 1982 or 83. And it's a great console, great arcade ports. I'm like, I'd really be cool to have a game. And I was kind of joking around with him, like, it'd be fun to have a game called Gamester81, the video game for the ColecoVision. I was just kind of joking around. And sure enough, Joe runs with that idea and goes on to the Atari age forums and starts looking at, people who can help. And the idea kind of sparked into fruition eventually and got teamed up with the guys at CollectorVision Games who helped produce that game. We did like Indiegogo and it was successful. And so I got to know those guys pretty well. And at the end of the day, they invited me to say, you want to jump on board, become co-owner of the company. And I did. And that was back in 2013. So I've been with them for 6 years and we kind of to that point, we're doing a lot of ColecoVision games and maybe a handful of like Atari 2600 games. But since then, we've expanded to NES. We just released a Sega Master System game, do a Super Nintendo, as well as our most recent one, Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan, which just came out for modern platforms.
Now, on the modern platforms, you guys are currently on Steam and Switch for the latest Sydney Hunter release. Is there any plans to be on PS4 and Xbox?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're actually working on that. We're gonna wait till beginning of next year because right now it's just crazy with the game market because all the AAA titles are out right now, right?
Well, yeah,
it's hard to compete with Luigi's Mansion and games like that when they're coming out. So we are going to wait until kind of that dust settles and probably come out sometime February next year.
I think the big month to avoid for next year is March. I wouldn't release anywhere near Final Fantasy personally. I mean, with you guys it's different, but I personally wouldn't for anything even kind of major.
Right. Yeah, it's hard because there's good games coming out all the time. I mean, like even when we released our game, there was the new Zelda remake that came out 2 weeks after. So there's that, and then even other indie games we're competing with, Blasphemous and the Untitled Goose Game. Games don't really expect to do great, and they do phenomenally well, which is good for them, but it kind of buries us too. So it's,
well, yeah.
you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, So
Now, I'm always interested in how people kind of approach the Switch from a development perspective. Is that something that you guys found fairly simple once you made the switch to Unity?
yeah, well, we've been working on the game since 2014. And initially it was supposed to be a Wii U game, which is funny. We have a Wii U dev kit, and actually we're going to probably still release on the Wii U, kind of on the deathbed
why
of the
not?
Wii U.
Yeah.
Which is why not? We already invested in it, and it'd be cool to have I think it'd be really cool to have a physical on the Wii U and be like the swan song of the Wii U, be the last game to be released on the system. It'd be kind of cool. So anyway, it was supposed to be a Wii U game initially, and then we obviously the Switch came out, and the Wii U is pretty much done. Yeah, Unity's great. You can do a lot of cool things with Unity. Getting approved for the Switch was a challenge because they're very selective, which is a good thing for Nintendo, but super happy to be on it, for sure.
Very cool. Now, in some of the interviews and blog posts where you've talked about Sydney and the Curse of the Mayan, one of the things that come up very briefly is the idea of a sequel.
Yeah, it's obviously you want to focus on this one first, just make sure it gets its legs off the ground, right? And it's doing okay. Sydney Hunter to us is kind of like our Mario to Nintendo, right? So we have other games featuring Sydney Hunter. And so a lot of people get kind of confused, like, I played that for the NES, or I played it for Super Nintendo, or the Intellivision. And that may be the case, but it's the same character, but different game, right? So technically we do kind of have a sequel already out. It typically would be called Caverns of Death. Sydney Hunter, the Caverns of Death. That's already available on Super Nintendo. And we're also porting to the NES. But what we'd love to do eventually is to do a remake of kind of a remastered version of this game and do it kind of hand-drawn graphics and sprites, almost like a Cuphead. We've got great artists. It just would take some time. We would basically just overlay hand-drawn artwork over the existing sprites and artwork. So it would take some time to do that. There's over 600 screens in the game, so it's no small task to do that. But we definitely want to get the legs off the ground for this one first and promote this really well. And then maybe down the road we'll do a remastered version.
I think something in the vein of the Wonder Boy remakes would be killer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that'd be really neat.
So one of the things that really kind of surprised me about Sydney Hunter, and I picked it up I think about a month or two ago and have been playing it on and off.
Great,
and
thank you.
One of the things that I noticed was there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Because initially I thought, oh, it's a platformer, I'll just kind of breeze through it. But it's more of an NES Castlevania where you have to really stop and consider the entire screen before making your decisions. How does that gameplay element kind of come into the idea of sitting down and charting all this out?
Yeah, it's interesting. The game started off as I don't know if you ever played the game Montezuma's Revenge for the Intellivision and just CollectorVision. It's a classic game. That game, for us, we love that game, and we wanted to do a clone, so to speak, for the NES. So this project actually started off back in the day as Sydney Hunter and the Mayan's Revenge is what it was called initially for the NES. And it was supposed to be a Montezuma's Revenge clone, right? So, but it evolved and we kept adding ideas. Some things stuck and some didn't, and it kind of evolved. We made the mistake of most game companies would come up with the idea first and the story first and then start programming it. We made the mistake of programming it and then come up with a story. It kind of evolved over time, and yeah.
And you guys are only a team of less than 10, yeah?
Yeah, there's 5 of us, really core of us working on this game. There's been a handful that we've contracted out that's helped out with some of the graphics and stuff, but for the most part, it's myself and then Russ is the programmer, Ben, Russ is in upstate New York, he's in Rochester. We got Ben, who's in Arkansas, and then we've got Toby and JF, who are in Montreal. So really just 5 core of us kind of working on this game. So it's been a fun journey. So the way I look at it is the first chapter is done as far as completing the game. Now it's on to chapter 2, and that's just to release.
Yeah, really kind of spread it out. And what amazed me about checking out some of your guys' stuff online is that you have that little mini console that you've worked on too.
Yeah, the Phoenix. Kind of taking that name for 2 reasons, because I live in Phoenix, but also kind of a play on work because the Phoenix is the ancient bird that rises from the ashes, right? So This is kind of a harpoons of that, right? So this is it's a FPGA CollectorVision console. So we'll play all CollectorVision carts, and then it has a SD card slot where you can load in ROMs for Atari 2600. We're also working on an adapter to play 2600 games as well through the CollectorVision. So it's been in process for 2 years, but it's out. It was challenging to get that out because a lot of people had a bad taste in their mouth from the Coleco Chameleon, as you can imagine.
Oh God, a lot of people were upset about that one.
Right, but now that we have obviously a released product, people have it in their hands. It's out there. We just started shipping the first batch about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. The early access people got theirs back in August. So it's been out for a while. So people who have it enjoy it. But it's very limited. Yeah, it's we have one guy, Toby, he's literally putting these things by hand together. So you can imagine the undertaking that takes to ship them out and build them together.
I think there's something appealing about that quality-wise, too. If everything's hand-built, there's probably a low chance of anything being faulty.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I'm happy with the way it turned out.
That's awesome. Now, you guys doing anything specifically as like an exclusive or something for it?
Well, yeah, what's cool is it's got an ability not only to play 2600 games, but can play F8 games, F18 games rather. And so what that is, it actually ups the graphic capability of the CollectorVision and the color palette, so it looks more online to like an NES game. So we've got some games that we're going to be releasing exclusively on the Phoenix that are going to look just like NES quality or better.
Now, you mentioned that the Phoenix has got that like mythological background, and then of course there's all the Mayan culture in Sydney Hunter. Tell me about your interest in mythology, because it seems like there's definitely a lot of it there.
Well, for sure. I've always been fascinated with just not only just Mayan culture, but the Egyptian too. But, working on Sydney Hunter, we did a lot of research on just the Maya background, whether it's the gods that you fight in the game or actually Mayan gods, right? So let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the names.
I just fought Sheba Lanka, and I'm familiar with a lot of these now
Sheba
because
Lanka,
of the game Smite.
So he's the jaguar god, right? So
Yeah.
Muzin-Kab is like the god of bees and honey, right? So you have to fight. So the whole premise of the story is you're Sydney Hunter, you get trapped in a Mayan pyramid as you're exploring, and you come to find out there's like the Mayan calendar gets destroyed by kind of an evil deity called Kukulkan, and he breaks up the calendar. So it's your goal in the game is to kind of go throughout and fight these Mayan gods and collect these pieces and kind of put together a Mayan calendar. But what's interesting is the game was taking place during the time of Wahab, which is actually the Mayans, not to get into too much, not to bore you with the story here, but the Maya were really smart. They figured out that there's 365 days a year in a calendar, right? But they had I think it was like 20 day months, but there was 5 days that were not accounted for in the calendar. Right. They consider this time of Wahab. And so they believe that Wahab, these 5 days of the year, that basically gods would go smite them and they were powerless against these gods. So they're really fearful. And that is the time when Sydney actually appears in this game, is during the time of Wahab. So there's parts of the game that are very to the Maya, mythology, so to speak. A lot of the graphics you see, the artwork, are actually Mayan artwork and stones that you see that we researched on and we just pixelated. So we try to stay as true as we could to the actual Maya culture.
And there's a great blog post that you guys wrote up on Gama Sutra that really has some of that detail work. And the side-by-sides are really cool. I know I saw a couple people that are like, wow, I mean, that actually gives me more interest as it being a kind of a culture piece for Mayan culture.
Yeah, thank you.
So where'd the idea of Sydney Hunter come from?
So Sydney was created by a guy named Keith Erickson back in 2011, I think. And it was if you go online, it's actually a Flash game. And it was Caverns of Death, which is what we ported to the Super Nintendo. So we reached out to Keith, great guy, great graphic artist, and he joined us, and we just love the character. I think there's a lot of things you could do with him. In the first game, you can use the boomerang. In Curse of the Mayan, you start off with a whip, you eventually get the boomerang, and you get the spear. So if you're you just defeated the Jaguar, Sheba Lanka, you just defeated him?
Yeah. I was stuck on him for the longest time. I just got the spear, and I beat that first face boss.
Okay, right on. So you're on. Yeah, your next boss is going to be I believe it's going to be the bee god.
Yeah, Montezuma.
Montezuma, yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about some of the games that really kind of made Curse of the Mayan, because you have elements of Mega Man, elements of Castlevania. That bomb special effect comes straight out of Super Mario 2.
Right, yeah. So what's funny about that is in Super Mario 2, it says boom, but it says bomb, we change it to say boom. We changed it slightly, but no, it's definitely a love letter for games that we grew up playing, right? So you mentioned a few of them, Mega Man, obviously, Castlevania series, big influence. Mario 2. Later on, even parts of the levels are like you get the sand, the quicksand, like in Mario 2. Some of enemies, the way they act are from Mario 2, for example. There's that, I don't know if you noticed the fall when you fight that gate god, you fall. That's that waterfall effect is actually from Zelda 2 when Link falls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of Easter eggs in the game, a ton of Easter eggs. So we wanted to, some of the feedback we're hearing, which is great, and kind of what we were shooting for, is people who are playing it feel like it's familiar, but it's unique. Right, so it's not like a direct rip-off of these games. It's more of a love letter, so to speak.
Yeah, of course.
And a tip of the hat. We appreciate these games. So a lot of the mechanics are taken from the games we grew up playing. Even later on, I don't know if you noticed playing the Jaguar God. If you noticed, some of the scenes were from DuckTales, with the Amazon stage. Some of that. So
DuckTales is really influential. There's a lot of people into that. So one of the things that I ran into the folks that did Shovel Knight back at PAX West in September, and I always kind of find it fascinating that their character shows up in a lot of different places. Would you guys ever consider doing like a crossover with Sydney, like putting him in some other title?
That'd be great. I would love to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've done that with. Oh, no, we haven't put him in any other games, but we'd love to do that. There is a hidden character, Yuki, from Unit Yuki. I don't know if you know this game or not, but she is a good friend of ours. It's a game that came out for TurboGrafx 16, the CD, and it came out for Genesis, and she's a great character, but she's actually hidden inside our game. Like you can find her in our game, Curse the Mayan. She's really hard to get to, but she'll give you a special item and stuff if you find her. And on that screen has our initials too. So we've kind of done that before where we've put other characters in our games, but yeah, we'd be open to putting Sydney somewhere else for sure.
There we go. Yeah, it's cool because the Shovel Knight guys are like, yeah, we get requests about once every other week or so, and I always tell them like, sure. And that's why Shovel Knight's in so many things, because people ask and they're like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, those guys are really, really cool. When our game came out, I talked to them for a while, and we just talked about just the marketing, and I mean, they're super supportive, and I appreciate those guys are awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Yacht Club does next, and what you guys are doing next. So I guess that does leave the question of, aside from marketing, what other projects are kind of in the pipeline? Or any that you can talk about, of course.
Well, sure. So we have some games coming out for the Phoenix that are going to be kind of exclusive. I can't really mention any titles at this point, but they're titles that people have played before. They're going to be really cool, kind of remastered, so to speak. They'll be available on the Phoenix. We've got a game coming out for the NES. It's already done. It's called Dead Tomb. It's a point-and-click kind of Egyptian-themed game, so it plays great. I mean, the game itself, like if you knew where you're going and you knew all the moves, you could beat the game in less than 10 minutes. However, it's a point and click, so you have to go find. It's a puzzle. There's actually no enemies in the game, which is odd, right? It's the way you die are from booby traps and things like that, right? Not making the right move. It's kind of a unique game, so that's going to be that's in the pipeline to get released very soon as well. We're going to port up Caverns of Death eventually to Genesis, which is in the works. And then we've got a new kind of it's called, we're calling it Tiny Night for a while. The title's kind of to be determined. It's a 16-bit graphic game going to come out for modern platforms. And of course, Justice Beaver, which we've been working on for forever. And that's going to be coming out this next year for the Super Nintendo.
Very cool. A lot of things going on for just 5 or 6 guys.
A lot of things, yeah. So we contract out programmers, so it's not like the same programmer works on all these projects. So we work with different teams on these games. But yeah, it's a lot going on for sure.
Very cool. Now, have you guys considered doing the whole like SNES mouse thing? Because there's one other NES homebrew, and I can't think of the name of it. It's like Escape something, where he actually modded in SNES mouse support on the regular Nintendo.
Huh, that's cool. Yeah. No, we haven't thought about that. That's interesting though. It's cool.
Yeah, that's something that was like really taken off in the homebrew, and maybe that guy's got some thoughts for you. I don't know, but it would be pretty neat.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because we've got a lot of experience releasing games on homebrew, but really, as I mentioned in my blog on Gamasutra, it's like it's much different marketing game for modern platforms. Much more
for sure.
For us anyway.
There's a whole nother wrinkle to that, and it's like everybody's got a theory on how to do games marketing, but I don't think any of it's 100% accurate.
That's right. Yeah.
You never know what's going to flash ban kick off or what's going to sustain. It's just you never can tell.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
So you guys run a big gaming expo. Tell me how that kind of was put together. And
yeah, so that's my other project, and that's kind of separate from CollectorVision. But so that's our Game On Expo. It started in 2015. It's here in Phoenix. I've been going to gaming conventions for years. Portland Retro Gaming Expo is an awesome event in Portland, for example, and been to MagFest out in Maryland, for example, right? So kind of started seeing, I went to Midwest Gaming Classic, which is a great event in Wisconsin and Milwaukee, and saw that there was really nothing here in Phoenix like that. Mm-hmm. So I started kind of talking around, and my good friend Jason Heine and I were just kind of, talking back and forth, and we're like, well, it'd be cool to do one. We never really got to the point of doing it, but I got back from 2014. I went to the Midwest Gaming Classic, and I got back from that event. I'm like, this is a really cool event. I'd really love to do it here in Phoenix. And I just basically, dove into it and took the risk, and with no experience on how to run an event at all. My only previous experience, I guess, would be like organizing a bachelor party, for a good friend of mine, right? So zero experience how to organize an event, and got really lucky, and just fortunately with my YouTube channel, obviously knowing people, got some guest out. out, got to market through the channel, got to market through people I know locally. Started in Mesa, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. We moved to downtown Phoenix this past 3 years ago, and it's grown. I mean, we had over 10,000 people last year, which is amazing. And we've met some cool guests. Like we had the voice of Mario came out last year. We had the voice of Tim Kitzrow, who's the voice of the NBA Jam announcer from the game. NBA
that
Jam.
guy.
Yeah. He's on fire, that guy.
He'll do voice recordings for you on Fiverr, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, nice. So no, got to meet some really cool, and like through the process, Daniel Pacina, who was original Mortal Kombat, he was Daniel Pacina. He was Scorpion. He was Johnny Cage. Got to know. I consider the guy a good friend of mine, which is crazy. Growing up as a kid, I never would imagine playing Mortal Kombat and like get to know these guys personally. It's pretty wild. Kind of blows my mind, So
yeah.
But the event's grown. It's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like it's modern and retro. So we have esports, we have retro gaming, we have tabletop, cosplay, all the above.
Very, very cool. So what's your favorite kind of community reaction, whether that be through YouTube, through the event, or through the Sydney development?
They're all different. I think they all have their pros, right? And they all have their challenges, right? I mean, nothing comes easy in life, and I've learned that in this process. So whether it's, my everyday, my work job, my family, my career, or with YouTube or the event or CollectorVision, you have to work at it. And you're going to get some, you're going to have some people who, they get some punches in the gut, so to speak, right? And
yeah,
not everything's going to come your way. But what I've kind of learned over the years is you got to keep your head down and kind of focus on your ultimate goal or where you want to go, and things end up working out in the end.
Very cool. And I just had a random thought because I'm that type of person. Are you guys considering a physical release of Sydney Hunter?
I would love to.
As far as the new one.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, great question. I get that. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me that, I'd be a really rich man. And
yeah,
I don't blame people. It's great. Great question. I love to. It takes a lot to produce something physical, right? So, we're looking at a minimum of 5,000 copies times, even if at, costs us $10 a piece, it's, we're looking at, $50,000 investment, which is not chump change. So that's just some rough numbers, just to give you an idea. So we have to prove that the game does well digitally first before we can approach, short answer, before we can approach other companies like Limited Run or whatever. Because the first thing they're going to ask is like, well, how's the game doing? Because in their minds, they don't want to release a game they feel wouldn't sell physically. I feel like Sydney Hunter would do really well physical. I feel this game, retro style, I think people who are retro gamers would just eat it up personally.
It could do really surprisingly. I see that a lot where some folks, if they're like into a retro indie or something, like I know me personally, I never bought Dead Cells because I knew it was good. I knew I'd get around to it eventually, but I also kind of had an inkling that there would be a physical release. So I waited to buy it physical.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I prefer physical too. And I get it. I get people who want to wait for physical and kudos and please wait. But for those who buy digital, just know that you're supporting the cause, and that the ultimate goal for us is to do a physical. So
right on.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite games that you've played here recently?
Oh, man. I just bought Ultimate Alliance 3 for the Switch. Been playing that for with my boys. It's been fun. That game's really, really hard. I've been playing, what else? Oh, I bought on Steam, I got this F1 racing game, 2019. And I got into I haven't really been big into F1 racing, to be honest, but I got Netflix as a show, F1 racing documentary, which is kind of intriguing, and I watched it, and I got binge watched it, and it's kind of fascinating. So I bought this game, and it's really cool. Like, you go into your career, and you can not only just race, and it's stunning graphically, but you also you interview the media, and based on your response, it changes the whole outcome of how people perceive you, if you're a team player or not. So it's actually a really cool kind of a spin on a twist on racing games, which is kind of cool. I've been playing Blasphemous, which was a lot of fun too. It's a great.
I've been meaning to pick that up. Mm-hmm.
It's a fun, 16-bit kind of side scroller. Really cool. I mean, there's finishing moves you can do and all that. Graphically, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's really stunning. Super bleak, but hauntingly beautiful. That one.
It is very dark. Indeed.
That's how I feel about Death Stranding currently. It's gorgeous, but ooh, it's sad. And then you were playing that F1 racer too. That's interesting. I never did get into many sports simulation games, but I can see the appeal.
Yeah, like I said, I've never really been into F1 racing. My father-in-law's huge into it. But I watched Netflix. There was a documentary on Netflix on F1 racing, and there's more to it than just the racing itself. There's a whole following each athlete, and the behind the scenes and the stories behind each one, and the drama with each team. So there's only 20 drivers, so it's a very small kind of tight-knit community for racing. So it's not like NASCAR where you get a ton of different drivers. There's only 20 of them.
I tell you what, I'll watch just about any kind of documentary. I love learning new stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely recommend it.
I watched one the other day about League of Legends, and I don't like League at all, but I like recognize how important it is. And they just had that huge tournament over the weekend too, which got bajillions of people and this really cool like opening ceremony show. So yeah, it's wild. But that was a really neat documentary.
Where'd you watch that?
You can find the opening ceremony on YouTube, and I recommend it because they do some really cool like hologram dance stuff that is just wild. I've never seen anything like it.
Wow, that's cool. Right on.
Cool. So I guess the last kind of question is, are you gonna keep rocking it with the YouTube thing? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, I am. It's
Cool.
I don't want to say it's taken a backseat to other things because it certainly hasn't, but in some ways it has, to be honest, because I've been so
Well,
busy.
you can only have so many eggs in so many baskets, right?
Right, for sure. So no, I absolutely plan on continuing doing videos. I don't post them as frequently as I like to be honest, but no, I definitely still enjoy doing it. It's a great community. I still enjoy interacting with the YouTube community, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'll continue to do it until it's not fun anymore.
Right on. I mean, the thing is, too, is you've covered so many things that it's kind of hard to find something you haven't touched on.
That's true. Yeah, there's only so many consoles I have, right? So it's
Right.
like, yeah, that is true.
What's the weirdest thing in your collection as far as like hardware or games or anything?
I think the Pippin is obviously comes up to mind. I have, man, there's a lot. There's a Taiwanese system I have that's like the Funtech ACAN. I don't know if you've heard of that before. It's a 16-bit.
Mhm.
It almost looks like a Super Nintendo clone. It's a 16. Kind of came out in the mid-90s. Very obscure, and only a handful of games came out for it. But I have that. There's just some random consoles that people never heard of. the
That's my favorite
Gizmondo, which is a handheld. I don't know if you've heard of that before or not.
I have actually. I know that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it came out early 2000s. It actually had augmented reality, which is pretty cool, way
Whoa.
before it even was a thing. But the guy who founded that ended up going to jail, was part of the mafia. Anyway, just it was a mess.
Yeah,
but,
there's a more interesting history than the actual system itself.
yeah, that's true.
Right around the time of the Game Boy Advance. I've got the Gamecom, the Game.com like PDA thing. That's a weird little system.
Do you have the Model 1 or 2? The big one or the smaller one?
I think it's the bigger one, but I couldn't tell you. I saw it at a game shop locally, and they had Resident Evil 2, and I'm like, I like Resident Evil, and I like weird shit. I'll buy that.
The games on that, they're like Mortal Kombat. I mean, the games on that, they had pretty good titles. I was surprised. They have like Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat, what other ones? Yeah, but
They're not great ports, but they got some big names.
yeah, not great ports at all. And it was all touchscreen, right? And a lot of shadowing. I remember, if I recall, a lot of the games had like shadowing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's weird. I like that kind of stuff though.
It's cool, for sure.
Well, all right, John, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything you kind of want to leave our listeners with?
Well, no, Alex, I truly appreciate you having me on. I'm sorry it's been a little while to get a hold of me, but thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, no worries.
But yeah, I'll just encourage people, go on to, Gamester81 if you want to find my channel. You can just Google it, CollectorVision Games, as well as Game On Expo. That's kind of what we talked about today.
Very cool. And if you guys haven't checked out Sydney Hunter, definitely do check it out. Once I get this episode kind of produced, I will eventually do a review on it. I kind of want to get a lot further into it. That way I have a good ground to actually make an argument.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, it's been getting great, really solid reviews. I was reading a review the other day, and I laughed because the guy gave us an 8 out of 10, which is solid. I'm super happy with that. 8 out of 10 is very solid. But
Yeah.
he said he compared it with Dark Souls hard. I'm like,
Oh.
Dark Souls is one of the hardest games I've played ever. And City Hunter is retro hard, but it's by all means not Dark Souls hard. That game is
No,
hard.
I'd put it more into a category of an old school Castlevania.
Yeah, that's more realistic. But yeah, when you start quoting that, I'm like, really? It's that hard? I don't know. I mean, I've literally played it hundreds of times, but you can literally go, if here's a tip for you. If you can just make sure you break all the blocks in the game, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You can actually beat the game without any backtracking at all. We made it so you can get collect the skulls. There's enough skulls. There's it's kind of linear to the point where you get the right amount of skulls, you get the right amount of items. You should be able to go start to finish without going backwards at all.
Yeah, so far I haven't had to re-enter a level, except for there's one path where I just played it where you can drop one side on the bomb and the other side at the bomb, and either way you get a skull, and I'm like, okay, I gotta go back to that. That's the only time I've went back.
We put a dozen extra skulls in the game now. So
Yeah.
you need to get 100 skulls to go to the last gate, but we actually added extra skulls, so you don't. I mean, it's up to you if you want to complete. If you're a completionist and you want to go back, you certainly can do that. But there's enough skulls there linearly, we can just play and not go back. So
Of course. Cool stuff. Well, like I said, John, I'm having a fun time with it, and I do appreciate you being on the show.
no, definitely. Please let me know. Yeah, definitely let me know when this is up. I'll share it, and I'd love to see your review on Sydney Hunter when it comes out. Thank you.
Excellent.
And of course, everybody listening to the Forever Classic Show, you can send us an email at theforeverclassicpodcast.com or at gmail.com. And of course, we're on Twitter. We'll have all the links in the description below as usual. Thank you all for listening, and of course, stay cool.